what's going on?
Where's your amp?
It's right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hello there. I'm here with my friend Mitch. Mitch, say hello.
Hello.
We're going to talk about fake guitar amps. My guess is that most of you out there are composers inside the box and you want to get the best sound possible. And I'm an okay guitar player, but I thought I'd bring in someone who is really good, and that's why Mitch is here. And he mentioned that he just bought the Strymon Iridium. It's been out a while, but I have never personally used it. So I thought today would be a great day to compare the Iridium versus Helix, the LT, not the full version, and my Kemper. So you get price ranges varying from, how much is the Iridium?
$3.99. I have a list.
$3.99. Oh, you have a list.
Yeah.
I need to get Mitch to plan out all my videos. This is great. The Iridium, $3.99. The Line 6 Helix guitar multi-effects floor processor is $15.99. That's not what I have in here. We have the Line 6 LT, which lacks the scribble strips, which is kind of important. Price is much better. Now back to the Kemper Profiler head, which is what I have here, $18.99. I can't believe I spent that. I don't want us to get lost in the details of sound comparisons. That's a different type of video and you can go find it. But what I want to do is address you out there that wants to step up your game and wants to know how much money you need to, or should you even put that money into this type of equipment. Let's start by taking a quick tour of Mitch's pedal board.
Essentially, I've got a little patch bay that I built to run my ins and outs, and then that runs to my fuzz pedal first. So basically, this is the first thing my guitar sees. And then we've got an overdrive pedal. Get that pick out of the way. Overdrive pedal, this is just a custom build. It's basically a ZVEX Super Hard-On with a master volume on it. So I can make it more of an overdrive or a boost. Then I run to a volume pedal, so my overdrives are before my volume. And then we've got the MD500 for all my modulation effects. Then the Iridium, and out of the Iridium, I'm going to DD200 delay and then an RV500 delay. I like the Iridium before my delays and reverbs just because it gives me a little more headroom. If I have the really long trailed reverbs and delays, sometimes it'll push this a little harder than I want it to. And yeah, then that runs back out to my patch bay and then out to front of house. Before I use this, I'm using the AC30 setting on just the traditional 212 cabinet setting on the Iridium. But before this, I was using an AC30 head into an isolation cabinet. So I really just tried to make this a direct replacement for what I had before. So I have it set to a little past breakup so that I have control on my volume pedal if I need it to be a little bit cleaner. And that's one thing I really like about the Iridium is that it can break up really well, feels good when you're playing it overdriven, but if I roll back on my volume knob, I can still have that same kind of response. It's not like it just dies like a lot of older modelers do.
Can I just play a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So this is just full up. Oh, can I back it off a little bit? So just like that, I have the ability to still have note clarity, even backing it off if I need things to be a little lighter. And I've found that the Iridium does really well with my boost going right into it. I can push it really hard and it does respond like an amp. It doesn't seem to get really flat and kind of flub out like maybe some older modelers that we would have, like the traditional, the pod?
Oh yeah.
And that was fine for its time, but it was not great. I'm not necessarily concerned with something sounding like a modeler or anything like that sounding exactly like a specific amp. What I want is whatever I'm using to feel amp-like. There are a lot of even digital modelers in like Pro Tools, Ableton, and they're fine. They sound fine. But what I'm looking for as a guitarist is I want to be able to play off of what I'm hearing. I want to feel the touch sensitivity I want to feel the connection between the strings and what I'm hearing. And a lot of the older modelers in the past really didn't do that. And what I found is we're really at a spot now with technology where you're not really going to make a bad decision going with any of them. It's more about what is going to fit the type of work you do, what's going to fit your application, and what's going to fit the existing gear or maybe future gear you plan to own.
Now you'll notice that the Iridium doesn't have any built-in effects. There's no compressors, or is there anything like that?
The only thing that I would say in terms of an effect is that it has a room reverb. So this is not like a reverb pedal. it's more to give you a little bit of space. A lot of times with modelers, it feels really dead unless you add some reverb to it. What this does is allow you to select a small, medium, or large style room to give it a little bit of life. You can imagine a guitar amp sitting in a room, either in a small room, slightly larger room, or a big room. You can definitely overdo it, but having a little bit on there helps to make it feel a little more alive.
The real value in something like the Iridium for Mitch is that he can use the pedals that he has been using for decades probably. He knows how they sound, how they respond. He knows what order he wants them in. He's done all that work. He's adding this amp at the end in place of an amplifier, with the one benefit of being able to put reverbs and delays after the amp, which you really can't do in a live setting. That has to be done on the PA side. So why don't you play through your pedals, just show us some of the sounds that you might go to in a normal situation.
Yeah, so maybe here's a little tremolo, a little delay, and a lot of reverb, kind of more on like a clean tone. So
FYI, I turned the lights off in the back of the room because they were causing a buzz. So it doesn't look as good, but we can't have the buzz.
So I got my first guitar at 14. My older brother took me to, I think it was the Dallas Guitar Show, and I got an Epiphone Les Paul Special. So it's like really cheap guitar, but it was cool. I liked it. And then a bunch of things. I played guitar for some churches for a while. Ended up moving to Nashville in, that would have been 2000. I'm a very poor historian. I'm gonna bring in a little fuzz here. Would have been about 2007 or so. I was playing guitar for the Sidewalk Prophets, who were like a contemporary Christian band. We traveled all over the U.S., playing a bunch of shows, churches, smaller stadiums at the time, and did that for a while. Played for a bunch of artists out of Nashville, smaller artists or local artists as well. And I made my way back to Dallas, where I'm originally from. And one notable artist, this would have been 2011 or so, for about a year I played bass for Maren Morris, who's a country pop star. I think now she's a little more pop than country. But we also, Maren and I were in a pop rock band together. It was sort of like the Cardigans. So she was a singer, there was a male singer, and I was playing guitar. So it was a different time. I had a lot more hair back then. Yeah.
So that's the Strymon Iridium through the pedalboard. I think you can gather that it's more than adequate. Listening to what he's playing is fantastic. The idea behind this box, the Helix, is that it is a portable amp and also takes advantage of Line 6's long history of being good with effects. And to me, it's the combination of those two is what makes it a valuable box. What's neat about the Helix is that you can put it all in order. You can start with your volume pedal if you want, then you can move into drives and you can switch everything around. It's all flexible. There are so many resources for getting the sounds that other people have already got and figuring out how to get that onto your device. And in some ways, that keeps you from learning your way around the instrument, but especially for a production music composer, if I know that I want a type of sound from a certain type of artist or genre, and someone has already done the work to put all of those pieces in line and has decided, this person uses this type of amp or these type of effects, well, I still have to play the part, but a lot of the hard work has been done for me. So that's where having a device like this is very nice.
A note on presets. So often when you get some of these things fresh out of the box from the manufacturer, their presets, sometimes they're okay, but most of the time they're going to be way outrageous and way not what you want. I would say that buying something like worship tutorials, patches, or we were talking about Tone Junkie for Kemper, something where somebody's already gone through and figured out how to get the most out of some of these devices can be a really good starting point. So maybe not making that the only tone that you use, but using that as a starting point to adjust from to your taste. It's certainly important to know how the devices function. It's good to read through the manual PDF a few times to make sure in a pinch you know how to make those adjustments. But I would say there's nothing wrong with relying on this because they've done the hard work and it's already approved by at least one other guitarist to sound good.
We're going to listen to Mitch play this. We have a clean sound and then a drive sound. This is a third-party IR of a matchless cabinet.
So this is the clean sound.
Sounds fairly uninspiring without the verb and delay.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, that you could have just your drive sounds from the device and then add in delay, your reverb after the fact in Pro Tools or whatever your editor is.
Absolutely.
And so there's reasons for one or the other depending on what you want.
But you are not going to buy this device unless you are ready to learn how to use it, because that's why you have it. Yes, you can add external effects. I will typically leave that extra bit of delay and reverb in Pro Tools or in post, but I also want to get the sound there as close as possible. But as far as the flexibility, I don't think it can be beat at this point in time.
Yep. Here's some dirty sounds.
Why don't you throw some delay on it just for fun? And one is an eighth note and one's a dot. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now we have right here, out of focus, is my Kemper profiling amp. Now, the biggest difference between the Kemper and the other devices, the modeling devices, is that it's a profiling amplifier. And what that means is you set up an amplifier. It could be my amplifier if I want it, your amplifier, anybody's amplifier. It could be a very specific one. It's not modeled. It's how that particular amp sounds. In the room that it's in, with the microphone that it's in, the preamps that it's in, any EQ, converters, all of what goes into a signal chain is represented in the profile. And you basically take a snapshot or a profile of that. And then once it's done, I can plug my guitar into my profiler once I've loaded it in and get that exact same sound. Now, it seems like voodoo in a lot of ways. I don't quite understand how it all works. When we start talking about the profiler, I think that is where we really get into comparisons to real amplifiers. And I will always be the one to say, and Mitch, do you agree? You can't beat a real amp. I mean,
You really can't.
a lot of that amp in the room feeling is the sound that the room is making when you're in there with it. And as a recording engineer, I know that that's often different than what I hear after it's gone through microphones and preamps and EQs and all that. For the recording engineer, profiler often is a closer a closer representation to what those particular amps sound when they're actually recorded in our environment. What do you think about that statement?
I would definitely agree with that. I'd say that the Iridium sounds a lot like it's already been processed by an engineer, which is good in a way. It kind of has a cleaner feel sometimes depending on how you're using it. But I definitely appreciate the rawness that you would get from a real amp recording.
The Kemper also has effects. They keep adding new effects. It's more cumbersome to use. I've had a hard time learning my way around the software. I plan on making a video about the Kemper, one, because I think you might enjoy a video about the Kemper, and also because I need to learn my way around the Kemper. I have it set up with a certain amount of amps that I like, usually a Fender Princeton, an AC30, a Matchless, and then I have like an old Vibra something or other for clean tones that I like. I go to those sounds all the time and I don't adjust it all that much. Oh, also a bass Ampeg B15 sound that I really like. But I don't deviate from that. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's all I need. But at the same time, I think if I knew the device better, I would actually think about ways to utilize it in ways that I'm not working with it. So that's one thing to consider. Let me take you over to the Kemper. The Kemper is made to look kind of like a real amplifier. You've got your gain knob on the left, you've got your EQs on the bottom, and you've got your main volume. Here's where you cycle through everything. And this feature is really nice with the stomps. You can turn them all on and off, and you can load in different effects to each spot. You can turn off all of the stack, or just the amp or the EQ or the cabinet, and then you have an effects section, and also some of those controls are hardwired to these particular knobs, the mod, delay, and reverb. There's a camera in the way here, but behind that is my setup, and if you've watched my videos, I've demonstrated quite a few times. But I have a cable running underneath my desk, around into a compressor. I like having compressor and drive pedals in front of the Kemper just because I like to mess with knobs, and then go into the tremolo and then into the Kemper. When profiles are made, they're often made at different levels of gain from the amplifier or the other equipment going into the amplifier. I like to pick one that's kind of where I want it to be. If I want it to be dirtier, I use a boost pedal before, or maybe a different compressor. I have space for more pedals. So if you've got some ideas for me, please leave that in the comments. I write a lot of music and I have to work fast. And there are 1,000 different places in this room where I can get caught in the details and not get work done. So this is one of the ways that I know it's sitting right there and I know how to get the sounds I want fast.
We've already played through the Iridium. We've already played through the Helix. We've not played through the Kemper yet. However, I will say that there are different applications for each of these things. I would say if you're the type of producer that is having guitarists come in on a regular basis, different types of guitarists for different types of genres, the Kemper may be a good bet because you may have access to a lot of different profiles that may not suit some guitarists on the Helix or using the Iridium. But I'd say that if you are the one that's going to be playing guitar and you need one guitar sound, the Iridium would probably be a good spot for that. And then the Helix is kind of, I feel after playing it, kind of like it's its own thing. I wouldn't say that it felt more amp-like than the Iridium so far, but I think it sounds really good.
Let's listen to the Kemper, the profile that we're using, and this is important. Stu G62 AC B4. AC is AC30. I'm not sure what B4 is. I think that's how it was sampled or whatever. But this came from Tone Junkie, which is a great resource. A bunch of videos online where he talks about the Kemper and the Helix and he compares them. So that's one of the excellent resources that you've got to have if you buy one of these devices. So this is a 62 AC30.
After playing the Kemper just now, I really feel like it had the dynamics that I would be looking for as a guitarist. It really felt like I was listening to a real amp in my headphones, as though I were in a studio and listening to it mic'd up. To me, really rivals the sounds that I was getting out of the Iridium. However, it's so big, I would never want to have to carry that along with my pedalboard to a gig. So that's a guitarist thing.
Perhaps in another video, we'll look at amps inside the computer. If you are just a casual guitar player, you don't record guitar all the time, or you record guitar in dense mixes where it's not going to be that big of a deal, just plug your guitar into a preamp, some kind of interface, get one of these other cheap amp sims and go for it, and don't dwell on it. But if you need a little bit more, we're lucky enough to live in a time where there are incredible options that aren't terribly expensive. I know $400 is a lot of money, but there are certain places that we need to put our money, and if you're a guitar player, then I would strongly consider one of these. Mitch's fingers and guitar are the two most important parts of this signal path. So if you don't like the sound, well, you can blame Mitch for that. Seriously, guitar pickups matter, that's what makes all of this so tricky to talk about in a 15-minute or less video. But yeah, we got a lot of good options. Mitch, you started a YouTube channel.
I did start a YouTube channel, yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, I have a business where I shoot video and photography, so I wanted to kind of show a little bit more of what I do behind the scenes. So I'm going to be talking about how people light their setups, how I light my setups with my clients, and I'm going to talk about audio as well. So sometimes there's going to be some music involved with that. Sometimes there's going to be processing, dialogue audio. I have a bunch of ideas for that.
His first video came out just a few weeks ago. Go check it out. You wrote a song?
Yes.
For an intro for your channel.
Yes.
So yeah, we can relate to that for sure. Any last words for us, Mitch?
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.